Most people will never build wealth, and not because the system is unfair or the odds are stacked against them. They will not build wealth because they are psychologically unfit for it. This is not an insult, it is a diagnosis. They cannot tolerate small power. They look at minor discipline, incremental control, slow accumulation, and feel offended by it. Saving $10 feels humiliating. Skipping a purchase feels restrictive. Repeating a boring habit feels pointless. And so they reject it quietly, instinctively. Every time they tell themselves a comforting lie, this does not matter. What they mean is this does not satisfy my ego. Power has never cared about ego. Power rewards those who can endure actions that feel insignificant today in exchange for leverage tomorrow. Those who cannot do this remain reactive their entire lives. They chase income but never control it. They earn money but never command it. And eventually they become dependent on circumstances they do not control. The poor are not defined by how much they earn. They are defined by how quickly money leaves their hands. Every paycheck arrives and vanishes. Not because expenses are unavoidable, but because there is no system in place to restrain them. No containment, no authority. This is the first and most fatal weakness. A person who cannot hold small amounts of money cannot hold large ones. The number does not change the behavior. Only the scale of the damage increases. More income simply accelerates the same pattern of loss. Yet most people refuse to accept this. They believe the solution lies elsewhere. A higher salary, a better opportunity, a lucky break. They wait. And while they wait, nothing changes. Waiting becomes their primary financial strategy. Machiavelli warned against this mindset in every domain of power. Those who wait for favorable conditions surrender initiative. Those who rely on fortune instead of structure become victims of it. Wealth, like power, belongs to those who impose order, not those who hope for relief. Small financial acts are acts of domination, not over others but over impulse, emotion, and short-term desire. They are proof that you can say no to the present without panicking about the future. This ability separates those who rise from those who remain stuck. The irony is that these actions look unimpressive. There is no applause for consistency, no recognition for restraint, no praise for boredom, and because there is no external reward, most people abandon the practice before it has time to transform them. But transformation does not announce itself at the beginning. It reveals itself only after repetition has reshaped behavior into identity. The first dollar saved is irrelevant in value. It is critical in meaning. It establishes a dangerous idea in the mind. Money does not have to disappear. Once that idea exists, it cannot be unseen. It demands to be tested again and again. Those who cannot tolerate this stage never move beyond it. They remain dependent, anxious, and financially fragile. Not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack command. And without command, no amount of money will ever be enough. Most people do not build. They wait to be saved. The majority of people do not approach money as builders. They approach it as dependents. They do not design systems. They endure circumstances. They are not actively constructing financial power. They are waiting for an external event to intervene on their behalf. This waiting is rarely conscious. It disguises itself as hope, optimism, or patience. But beneath the surface, it is passivity. And passivity in any arena of power is a confession of weakness. They wait for a raise that will finally make saving possible. They wait for a better job that will give them breathing room. They wait for the market to improve, the economy to stabilize, the timing to feel right. And while they wait, nothing accumulates. Money comes in and leaves immediately. Every paycheck is consumed by necessity, impulse, and habit. Not because every expense is unavoidable, but because there is no structure in place to resist them, no containment, no strategy, only reaction. This is not a resource problem. It is a control problem. A person who is building does not ask whether conditions are ideal. They ask what can be secured now. Even a small reserve slowly assembled represents independence from immediate pressure. Without it, every decision is made under threat, under urgency, under fear. Fear is not a neutral force. It distorts judgment. The person with no financial buffer cannot afford to think long-term. They take bad jobs because they need immediate income. They stay in unfavorable situations because they cannot absorb short-term loss. They accept exploitative terms because resistance feels too risky. In this state, morality becomes flexible, standards erode, and desperation dictates behavior. Machiavelli understood this dynamic intimately. Those who depend on fortune or mercy are never free. The ruler who lacks reserves is forced into alliances he cannot control. The state without surplus is governed by crisis rather than intention, and the individual without financial margin becomes reactive, predictable and easy to manipulate. Yet most people continue waiting. They tell themselves that once they earn more, they will start saving. This belief is convenient and false. Income does not create discipline. It amplifies whatever habits already exist. A person who spends everything at a low income will spend everything at a higher one. The numbers change. The pattern does not. Waiting for rescue absolves the individual of responsibility. If success depends on an external breakthrough, failure can always be blamed on circumstances, the system, the economy, the employer. This narrative is comforting because it removes the burden of action. But comfort is not power. Builders operate differently. They assume no one is coming. No raise will save them. No opportunity will arrive on schedule. This assumption is not pessimism, it is clarity. From that clarity comes action. Small, deliberate, often unimpressive action. They do not aim for dramatic transformation. They aim for containment, for stability, for the elimination of fragility. One expense reduced, one small reserve created, one predictable habit enforced. These steps are not exciting, but they are decisive. The moment a person stops waiting, leverage begins to form. A small emergency fund does not make life luxurious. It makes life negotiable. It introduces choice where there was previously only compliance. It allows refusal, delay, evaluation, and those capacities more than income define real power. Those who build understand this. Those who wait never do. Waiting is seductive because it feels like progress without risk. Building feels slow, uncomfortable, and unrewarded in the short term. But history is unforgiving to those who confuse patience with inaction. Fortune favors the prepared, not the hopeful. Most people will continue to wait. They will call it prudence. They will call it realism. They will call it timing. In truth, it is avoidance. And avoidance ensures that when pressure arrives, as it always does, they will have nothing to stand on. Power does not come to those who ask for it. It accumulates around those who assume responsibility before they feel ready. Those who stop waiting to be saved and begin acting as if no rescue is coming. That assumption changes everything. Power does not begin with money. It begins with control. The greatest misconception about wealth is the belief that money creates power. It does not. Money without control merely exposes weakness at a larger scale. True power begins earlier at a quieter and far less glamorous stage. The ability to contain, direct, and restrain resources. Control precedes abundance always. A person with no financial buffer lives under constant pressure. Every bill is urgent. Every expense is a threat. Every decision is rushed. In this state, strategy is impossible. There is only reaction. And reaction is the behavior of those being governed, not those governing. Control in financial terms means margin. It means having enough separation between income and obligation to think clearly. This margin does not need to be large. It needs to exist. Even a modest reserve creates distance from panic, and distance from panic creates rational thought. Without control, income is irrelevant. Many people earn respectable salaries and yet remain fragile. Their expenses expand to meet their earnings. Their commitments multiply and their margin stays at zero. On paper, they look successful. In reality, they are exposed, one disruption away from collapse. This is why income is a poor indicator of power. Control is a far better one. Machiavelli warned that rulers who appear strong but lack internal stability are the most vulnerable. They command armies yet cannot endure sieges. They project authority yet collapse at the first sustained pressure. The same principle applies to individuals. Appearance without reserve is a liability. Control is established through deliberate limitation, through the refusal to consume everything available, through the discipline to say no when yes would be easier. This restraint feels unnatural to those accustomed to immediate gratification, but it is the foundation of independence. A small emergency fund represents more than safety. It represents sovereignty. It signals that the individual is no longer fully subject to circumstance. They can absorb minor shocks without imploding. They can delay decisions. They can evaluate options. These are not luxuries. They are prerequisites for power. When control is absent, morality becomes compromised. A person who must accept any income will tolerate conditions they would otherwise reject. They will compromise values, health, and dignity for survival. This is not because they are weak-willed, but because they lack margin. Control restores choice, and choice restores integrity. The transition from fragility to control is rarely dramatic. It is not marked by celebration or recognition. It begins quietly, often unnoticed, with the first sustained separation between earning and spending. That separation is the line between dependence and autonomy. Once control is established, behavior changes. Decisions slow down. Panic recedes. The individual begins to operate from intention rather than urgency. They stop asking, "What do I need right now?" and start asking, "What strengthens my position?" This shift is subtle, but it alters everything that follows. Control also compounds. Each month of stability reinforces the next. Each avoided crisis preserves energy, focus, and time. Over time, the absence of emergencies becomes its own form of wealth. Not because nothing goes wrong, but because nothing is catastrophic. Those who seek power without control chase illusion. They pursue higher income, riskier bets, louder success. They accumulate exposure without protection. When pressure comes, and it always does, their position collapses. Those who understand power build from the inside out. They secure their base before expanding their reach. They value restraint over display, margin over momentum, and control over comfort. Money arrives later, control must come first. Without control, wealth is noise. With control, even modest resources become leverage, and leverage, not money, is what ultimately separates those who command their lives from those who endure them. The most decisive psychological blow, the first victory. Every shift in power begins with a breach not of systems, not of markets, but of belief. The most decisive moment in financial transformation is not the accumulation of wealth, but the destruction of the assumption that change is impossible. This is why the first victory matters more than all those that follow. Before the first win, discipline feels theoretical. Plans sound reasonable but unreal. Saving is something other people do. People with advantages, higher income, better timing. The mind protects itself with this narrative because it explains failure without demanding action. As long as success remains abstract, inaction feels justified. The first victory breaks this illusion. It does not matter how small it is. $50 saved, one unnecessary expense eliminated, 1 month without overspending. These actions carry no financial significance on their own. Their value lies elsewhere. They introduce evidence, and evidence is lethal to excuses. Once a person sees proof that money does not inevitably disappear, the internal narrative begins to fracture. The belief that I cannot loses credibility. The mind which previously resisted change is forced to adapt to new information. This is not motivation. It is confrontation. Machiavelli understood that loyalty is secured not through promises but through victories, even minor ones. A ruler who wins a small battle gains more authority than one who speaks convincingly about future triumphs. Success establishes legitimacy. The same applies internally. The first win legitimizes discipline. This is why people who never secure an initial victory remain stuck indefinitely. They may read endlessly, plan obsessively, and discuss strategies with confidence. But without evidence of execution, all of it remains hollow. Knowledge without proof creates arrogance, not power. The psychological impact of the first win is disproportionate. It alters perception of effort. What once felt impossible now feels merely uncomfortable. What felt pointless now feels procedural. The action itself has not changed. The meaning attached to it has. At this stage, the brain begins to cooperate rather than resist. Each small success releases a subtle reinforcement, not as pleasure, but as validation. The individual starts to see themselves differently, not as someone attempting discipline, but as someone capable of it. This distinction is critical. Identity shifts precede behavior change. A person who believes they are disciplined behaves differently under pressure than one who believes they are merely trying. The former adapts, the latter quits. The first victory marks the transition between these states. This is also why large aggressive goals often fail. They demand identity before it has been earned. They require belief without proof. When exhaustion arrives, and it always does, the absence of prior wins leaves nothing to anchor persistence. Collapse follows, and the individual interprets it as personal failure rather than strategic error. Small victories avoid this trap. They impose minimal strain while delivering maximum psychological leverage. They are repeatable, sustainable, and cumulative. Each one reinforces the last, creating momentum without spectacle. Once the first victory is secured, progress accelerates. Not because the actions change, but because resistance diminishes. The mind stops arguing. It starts executing. Saving becomes routine. Restraint becomes familiar. What once required effort becomes default. Those who understand this never rush the process. They do not seek dramatic transformation. They seek the first breach in their own disbelief. They know that once it occurs, the rest is a matter of continuation. The tragedy is that most people never reach this point. They abandon the process before the psychological shift occurs. They stop when results are still invisible, unaware that they are standing just short of the most important threshold. The first victory is small, quiet, and easily dismissed. But it is the moment control becomes real. And once control is real, repetition turns it into power. The mind does not obey grand goals. It obeys small results. Most people misunderstand how the human mind functions, and they pay for that misunderstanding with stagnation. They believe motivation is born from ambition, that large goals inspire sustained action. This belief is comforting and incorrect. The mind does not respond to promises of a distant future. It responds to proof in the present. Grand goals are abstract. They exist in imagination, not experience. The brain treats them as speculation, not reality. No matter how noble or ambitious a vision sounds, without immediate evidence, it carries no authority. This is why people announce life-changing plans with enthusiasm and abandon them weeks later without surprise. The mind never fully accepted the command. Small results are different. They are tangible, verifiable, unarguable. When a person saves their first small amount, avoids a single impulse purchase, or completes one disciplined cycle, the brain receives data, not ideology. The result exists. It cannot be debated, and because it exists, it reshapes perception. Machiavelli understood that authority is established through demonstration, not intention. A ruler who declares strength without proof invites rebellion. A ruler who secures small visible victories silences doubt before it forms. The same mechanism governs the individual mind. It submits to evidence, not ambition. This is why most people fail when they set aggressive financial targets, saving hundreds each month, eliminating all indulgences, transforming habits overnight. These demands assume obedience before trust is established. The mind resists. Fatigue sets in, rationalizations emerge. The system collapses not because the person lacks willpower, but because the strategy violates human psychology. The brain is conservative by design. It resists change unless convinced that the new behavior is both survivable and repeatable. Small results provide that reassurance. Each minor success sends a message. This action does not threaten stability. Over time, resistance fades. Once resistance fades, execution becomes automatic. This is the phase most people never reach. They quit while the mind is still negotiating. They misinterpret internal resistance as proof of impossibility rather than evidence of poor sequencing. They attempt to force obedience through pressure instead of earning it through repetition. Small results earn trust. Each visible outcome, no matter how modest, reduces internal friction. The mind stops questioning whether discipline is sustainable and starts treating it as normal. This shift is not emotional. It is structural. Behavior changes because resistance has been removed, not because desire has increased. This is also why identity changes only after results appear. A person does not become disciplined by declaring it. They become disciplined by observing themselves behave that way repeatedly. Identity follows evidence. The individual who accumulates small financial results begins to internalize a new self-concept. I execute what I decide. This belief carries authority. It influences decisions beyond money, work, health, relationships. The mind aligns behavior with the identity it recognizes as real. Those who chase large goals without small confirmations never build this alignment. Their identity remains unchanged. They continue to see themselves as inconsistent, undisciplined, or unlucky, and the mind acts accordingly. Results command obedience. Goals request cooperation. The distinction is critical. People who build power understand this intuitively. They design systems that produce immediate, repeatable outcomes. They reduce the psychological cost of action. They let evidence do the persuasion. Over time, momentum replaces effort. Those who fail remain trapped in negotiation with themselves. They argue internally, seek motivation, consume information, and wait for clarity. All the while, no results appear. And without results, the mind never submits. Control over the mind is not achieved through force. It is achieved through proof. Small results provide that proof. Relentlessly, quietly, inevitably. Those who master this principle do not rely on inspiration. They rely on accumulation, and accumulation once underway makes obedience automatic. This is how power takes root, one small undeniable result at a time. The difference between trying and becoming. Most people spend their lives trying, very few ever become. The distinction appears subtle, almost semantic, but it defines the boundary between temporary effort and permanent power. Trying is a state of tension. Becoming is a state of alignment. One collapses under pressure, the other endures. When someone says, "I am trying to save money," they reveal more than intention. They reveal uncertainty. Trying implies negotiation. It suggests that success is conditional, dependent on mood, circumstances, or convenience. The action exists only as long as it feels manageable. Becoming eliminates that negotiation. A person who has become something no longer debates whether to act. A saver saves. A builder builds. A disciplined individual maintains structure regardless of discomfort. Behavior is no longer aspirational, it is expected. This is why most financial plans fail. They are built on effort rather than identity. Effort is finite. Identity is persistent. Machiavelli understood that power is stabilized when behavior becomes predictable to others and to oneself. A ruler who governs inconsistently invites challenge. One who acts in accordance with a clear identity establishes authority without explanation. The same applies internally. The mind obeys consistency, not aspiration. Trying relies on motivation. Motivation is unstable. It rises and falls with emotion, energy, and external validation. When motivation fades, as it inevitably does, trying dissolves. The individual interprets this collapse as weakness when in fact it is structural failure. Becoming relies on standards. Standards do not ask how you feel. They define what happens regardless of feeling. A person who has adopted the identity of a saver does not ask whether saving is convenient this month. The question has already been answered. The behavior is embedded. Identity is not formed through declaration. It is constructed through repetition. Each small financial win contributes a data point. Over time, these data points accumulate into self-recognition. This is who I am, this is what I do. Once identity is established, behavior requires less effort. The mind seeks consistency between self-image and action. Acting against identity creates discomfort. Acting in alignment with it feels natural. This is the hidden advantage of becoming. Those who remain in a state of trying never cross this threshold. They reset their goals repeatedly. They restart plans. They seek fresh motivation. Each reset reinforces the belief that discipline is temporary. The cycle continues. Becoming ends the cycle. The person who becomes disciplined does not need extreme rules. They do not rely on rigid budgets or constant monitoring. Their decisions are guided by internal standards rather than external controls. This makes their discipline resilient. In financial terms, this shift is decisive. A person who has become a saver will protect their margin instinctively. They will avoid commitments that threaten stability. They will prioritize control over display. These choices are not heroic. They are automatic. This is why the early phase of building wealth feels difficult and unrewarding. Identity has not yet shifted. Behavior still requires conscious effort. This phase tests patience more than ability. Most people abandon the process here, unaware that the real transformation occurs just beyond their tolerance for boredom. Those who persist through this phase cross into a different category. Saving no longer feels like deprivation. It feels like maintenance. Control no longer feels restrictive. It feels necessary. Trying ends when conditions worsen. Becoming adapts. The difference determines outcomes over decades. Those who try may experience occasional success. Those who become compounded. Power is not held together by effort. It is sustained by identity, and identity once established governs behavior long after motivation has disappeared. Compound interest is merciless and it is never biased. Compound interest does not reward intention. It does not care about effort, fairness, or hardship. It responds only to time and consistency. This is what makes it ruthless and what makes it honest. Most people misunderstand compound interest because they think of it as a financial concept. It is not. It is a law of accumulation, and like all laws, it operates without sympathy. Those who contribute small amounts consistently are rewarded disproportionately over time. Those who delay, hesitate, or interrupt the process are punished just as disproportionately. There is no middle ground. There is no negotiation. This is why compound interest feels cruel to the impatient. In the early stages, it offers nothing visible. Progress is slow, almost insulting. Contributions feel meaningless. Returns are negligible. The system appears broken. Many quit here. Convinced the effort is wasted. It is not wasted. It is merely uncompromising. Machiavelli understood that power rarely reveals itself at the beginning. It accumulates invisibly beneath the surface until it becomes undeniable. Those who abandon the process because they cannot see immediate dominance disqualify themselves before the real leverage appears. Compound interest operates the same way. In the early years, the contributor does all the work. Discipline feels unrewarded. Sacrifice feels unacknowledged. But over time, the balance shifts. Eventually, the returns exceed the contributions. At that point, effort decreases while results accelerate. Power has changed hands. This is the moment most people never reach. They stop before the curve bends in their favor. They conclude that saving small amounts is pointless because it does not change their life quickly. What they fail to understand is that compound interest is not designed to change lives quickly. It is designed to make outcomes inevitable. The bias of compound interest is toward those who start early and remain consistent. It does not care how much you earn. It does not care about talent or intelligence. It does not even care about ambition. It cares only about duration and repetition. This is why it feels unfair. Two individuals can earn similar incomes, live similar lives, and yet end in radically different financial positions. The difference is rarely a single decision. It is the presence or absence of uninterrupted accumulation. One respected the process, the other disrupted it repeatedly. Compound interest punishes interruption. Each pause resets momentum. Each withdrawal weakens the curve. Each delay sacrifices time, an asset that cannot be replaced. Those who stop and restart repeatedly never benefit fully, no matter how hard they work later. This is why chasing higher returns without consistency is dangerous. Risk without discipline accelerates loss. Compound interest magnifies whatever behavior it is fed. Feed it discipline and it becomes an ally. Feed it inconsistency and it becomes an executioner. Those who build power understand this. They do not obsess over optimization at the beginning. They prioritize continuity. They protect the process. They avoid actions that break compounding even when temptation is high. This restraint is rarely admired. It produces no immediate prestige. But over decades it separates those who control their future from those who remain subject to it. Compound interest is not generous. It is precise. It does not forgive impatience. It does not reward excuses. It does not compensate for late realization. It simply compounds what is given to it relentlessly until the outcome becomes irreversible. Those who respect this law align their behavior accordingly. They move slowly at first. They tolerate boredom. They accept delayed gratification without complaint. They understand that the absence of visible progress is not failure. It is the price of entry. In the end, compound interest creates distance. Distance between those who acted early and those who waited. Distance between those who endured monotony and those who demanded excitement. Distance that cannot be closed by effort alone. It is merciless and it is fair. Those who submit to it gain leverage that appears almost supernatural to those who did not. Those without reserves always make bad decisions. A person without reserves is not free. They may believe they are making choices, but in reality they are responding to pressure, and pressure corrupts judgment. When financial margin is absent, every decision is distorted by urgency. The question is never what is the best move, it is what keeps me alive right now. This shift seems subtle, but it degrades intelligence, ethics, and long-term positioning in ways that are difficult to reverse. Scarcity narrows vision. It compresses time. It forces the mind into survival mode where short-term relief is prioritized over long-term consequence. In this state, people accept unfavorable terms, ignore hidden costs, and choose immediate certainty over strategic advantage. This is not a personal failing. It is a predictable cognitive response. Machiavelli understood that leaders who govern from crisis cannot govern well. A state without reserves is ruled by emergencies. A ruler without margin is driven into alliances they do not control. The same applies to individuals. Without financial buffer, life becomes a series of forced moves. Bad jobs are accepted because income is needed immediately. Toxic environments are tolerated because departure feels too risky. High-interest debt becomes acceptable because there is no alternative. Each compromise appears rational in isolation. Collectively, they create long-term damage. This is how people become trapped. Reserves change the nature of choice. Even modest savings create distance from panic. Distance restores judgment. Judgment restores leverage. With leverage, decisions shift from reactive to intentional. A person with reserves can wait. They can evaluate. They can refuse. These abilities are invisible to those who lack them. Yet they determine outcomes over decades. Consider negotiation. A person who needs the deal cannot negotiate. A person who can walk away controls the terms. This principle governs employment, business, relationships, and finance. Reserves grant the power to walk away. Without that power, consent is meaningless. This is why people without savings consistently make decisions that appear irrational from the outside. They overpay, they rush. They commit prematurely. They sacrifice future stability for present relief. Observers often judge these choices harshly. Unaware of the invisible constraint shaping them, reserves dissolve that constraint. Once pressure is reduced, behavior improves rapidly. The individual becomes selective. They stop chasing short-term fixes. They begin evaluating risk properly. They recognize that not every opportunity deserves acceptance. This shift is often misinterpreted as confidence. In truth, it is security. Machiavelli warned that desperation makes individuals predictable. Predictable actors are easy to exploit. Employers sense it. Lenders profit from it. Markets capitalize on it. The absence of reserves exposes weakness that others instinctively use. Those with reserves are harder to manipulate. They are not immune to pressure, but they are less reactive to it. They do not need to agree immediately. They can afford silence. Silence in negotiation is power. This is why building a financial buffer should precede aggressive investing, risk-taking, or expansion. Without a foundation, growth strategies amplify fragility. One setback becomes catastrophic. One mistake triggers collapse. Reserves do not guarantee success. They guarantee survivability, and survivability is the prerequisite for every form of power. Those who ignore this principle pursue advancement while remaining vulnerable. They chase progress without protection. When pressure arrives, as it inevitably does, their position collapses. Those who understand power secure margin first. They eliminate desperation. They reduce urgency. They create the conditions for rational decision-making. In the end, bad decisions are rarely the result of poor intelligence. They are the result of insufficient reserves. Remove the pressure and clarity returns. Control begins not with bold action but with the quiet elimination of desperation. Financial discipline does not create money. It creates the person who controls it. Money is not transformed first. The individual is. This is the misunderstanding that traps most people. They treat financial discipline as a tactic for accumulating currency when in reality it is a process of reshaping character. Money merely exposes what discipline has already formed. A person without discipline will lose money at any scale. A person with discipline will eventually accumulate it even from modest beginnings. The difference is not intelligence, opportunity, or luck. It is behavioral structure. Financial discipline is not about restriction. It is about authorship. It determines who is writing the script of your life, impulse, or intention. Those who lack discipline live reactively. They respond to stimuli, trends, and emotions. Those with discipline impose order on chaos. Machiavelli understood that institutions outlast individuals because they encode behavior into systems. Discipline functions the same way at the personal level. It transforms scattered effort into predictable outcomes. It replaces emotional decision-making with process. This transformation does not announce itself with wealth. It announces itself with consistency. The disciplined individual does not need constant monitoring. They do not rely on motivation. Their actions are guided by internal standards that remain stable under stress. This stability is the true asset being built. Money is a secondary outcome. Each financial decision, every expense resisted, every contribution maintained, every commitment evaluated strengthens the same internal muscle. Delayed gratification becomes familiar. Impulse loses authority. The future gains weight over time. This discipline spills into other domains. The individual becomes less reactive in conversation, more deliberate in career choices, more measured in relationships. Financial discipline trains the mind to tolerate discomfort without panic. This tolerance is rare and it is powerful. Those who cannot tolerate short-term discomfort seek immediate relief. They overconsume, overcommit, and overact. Their lives oscillate between urgency and exhaustion. Discipline interrupts this cycle. It creates space between desire and action. In that space, power forms. Financial discipline also clarifies values. When resources are limited by choice rather than circumstance, priorities become visible. What is funded grows. What is neglected withers. Over time, the individual's life aligns with what they consistently invest in. This alignment is not accidental. It is the product of repeated deliberate decisions. Machiavelli observed that rulers who lack self-control cannot control others. Their inconsistency breeds instability. Their excess invites resentment. The same principle governs the individual. A person who cannot regulate their own consumption cannot command their environment. Discipline creates credibility internally first, externally later. The disciplined person trusts themselves. This trust reduces anxiety. It enables long-term planning. It allows for calculated risk rather than reckless behavior. Over time, this trust compounds into confidence, not performative confidence, but grounded assurance. Others respond to this unconsciously. Employers offer more responsibility. Partners negotiate differently. Opportunities shift toward those who demonstrate reliability. Discipline, though invisible, alters how the world engages with you. This is why financial discipline matters even before it produces financial results. It builds the person capable of sustaining success. Without discipline, money creates chaos. With discipline, even limited resources create momentum. The sequence is non-negotiable. Those who chase money without discipline amplify their weaknesses. Those who build discipline before wealth amplify their strengths. In the end, financial discipline is not a tool for becoming rich. It is a framework for becoming formidable. Money follows the person who can command themselves, and those who master themselves rarely remain powerless for long. Conclusion. In the spirit of Machiavelli, there is no secret, no formula hidden from the public, no injustice so overwhelming that it excuses inaction. What separates those who build power from those who endure life is not access to opportunity, but the willingness to accept an uncomfortable truth. No one is coming to save you. Most people spend their lives waiting for conditions to improve. They wait for more money, more clarity, more confidence. In doing so, they surrender the only resource that cannot be recovered. Time does not pause for readiness. It compounds regardless of participation. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the prepared, not the hopeful. Those who rely on chance subject themselves under its authority. Those who prepare impose authority upon it. Wealth operates under the same logic. The process is not dramatic. It does not provide emotional reward at the beginning. It offers boredom, repetition, and delayed recognition. This is why it filters so effectively. Most people will not endure actions that do not flatter the ego. Small wins feel insignificant because they are quiet, but they are quiet by design. Power is never loud while it is being built. It becomes visible only after it has become stable. Those who dismiss small actions as meaningless reveal their impatience. Those who wait for proof before committing reveal their dependence. The disciplined act without reassurance. They understand that evidence follows execution, not the other way around. There is no shortcut that bypasses control. There is no income level that compensates for chaos. There is no intelligence that substitutes for discipline. These truths are not motivational. They are structural. The future belongs to those who build margin. Margin to think, margin to choose, margin to refuse. Without margin, life is negotiation under threat. With margin, it becomes strategy. This is why the earliest stages matter most. Not because they produce wealth, but because they eliminate fragility. Once fragility is removed, progress becomes inevitable. Compounding does the rest. Many will read this and agree intellectually. Few will act. Agreement costs nothing. Action costs comfort. And comfort is the currency most people refuse to spend. 5 years from now, you will be older regardless of what you do. The question is whether you will be older with leverage or older with excuses. The difference is measured not in ambition but in consistency. Choose one small action. Make it repeatable. Protect it from interruption. Do not announce it. Do not dramatize it. Let it operate quietly. Power is not built through declarations. It is built through habits that survive boredom. Those who understand this will not feel inspired. They will feel resolved. And resolution, not enthusiasm, is what carries behavior through time. This is the Machiavellian reality. Power does not arrive as a gift. It accumulates around those who take responsibility before they feel ready. And once accumulated, it rarely leaves.